Welcome, welcome to CreateAWorld. The women that you see in front of you are all collaborators. We have known each other for, at least 10 plus years, really working on how we be more of who we came here to be. And in that process, we are in conversation. So it isn't we know better than you know what you want to be. We encourage the unfolding of each other. And in that, we often interview other people. So if you look at the other podcasts that we have done, you will see those interviews. Today, we are talking together because often we're interviewing other people, but we decided today that we wanted to talk about how we take back our own story. The story that we were born with, and that in some way got abrogated by the society that we live within. You have the same experience, I'm quite sure. Society has a lot of rules. Tantra always says that somewhere about 2 years old, we are socialized. And in that socialization, we are often told who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be. And we're told how to measure that. And it's usually a measure from the external world. So instead of blossoming your unique and essential self, you become who your family and society told you to be. Well, we're all about becoming who you came here to be, being who you came here to be. And that will be the conversation today, how it has appeared in our lives and how we see it. The capability to take back our own story is rising. So who would like to take it from here? They were chattering like chatterboxes before this.
I'm
Okay.
looking at where to start. I mean, it's such a big question and a big event.
But isn't it piece by piece, though? It's like we are so used to following what others have told us to be that the first is like last week, you and Victoria talked about cognition and how there are different forms of cognition or knowing. And isn't that part of the journey? Becoming aware of how you know?
I guess it could be. It's going to be different for everyone else. For each person, the entry point to, wait a minute, how do I be? And how do I be accepting of, say, my kids becoming who they are? I think for me, it was the measures of success. You're successful if. And yeah, I think that's where it really started for me. That and yeah, I think that was the biggest part.
But is it success in the adult world? I see it happening very young.
Oh, yeah.
How you be successful at being a good boy or girl, a good student, an obedient child.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It starts way back because you have to. I don't think there's any way around imparting your culture, imparting your, like the Western culture and all the subcultures within it. I don't think there's any way around that. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that until it becomes rigid about you have to be this way. And, when we were growing up, it's girls wear pink, boys wear blue kind of thing. It's not that cut and dried I don't know if it is or isn't, actually. I don't think it's that cut and dried anymore. But what I mean about the measures of success was I thought I was being and doing what I was supposed to do to be a successful adult, and came right up against things that were contrary to that. And then I had to start looking at, wait a minute, what is this really? And it took a while, and it was not pleasant to have to realize, wait a minute, the agenda isn't about being good people together, good whatevers together on behalf of. No, it's an agenda for that company or an agenda for that family member. And it was really disjointed. And so it was a lot of searching and critical thinking and forgiving myself and others. And forgiving doesn't mean go back to the old ways. So, and then there's finding what's, or creating what's
President.
supportive. Yeah. So I think this is a big question for people. And lots of times puts people in a impossible situation. Catch 22 kind of thing.
Well, and I
Yeah.
do think it starts with getting to know who you really are, at the core of your being. And that also, Deb, as you say, is not it's not an easy journey, and it's not an overnight journey. But so I think that's why it's important to pay attention to how we experience what we experience in the world. And, we often in the field of Tantra Mat will use the phrases, life defeating versus life enhancing or life giving. And, and what's life giving is different for each person. I mean, as New Year's Eve is upon us, I think about the years that, when I was younger and I was out in the middle of some loud, crowded party. And, for some people, that was their goal on New Year's Eve. And for me, it was like, oh my God, is it midnight? Can I go home yet? So, so we are all different. But really paying attention to but paying attention at that level requires, in my experience, and for me, a level of stillness that can be hard to come by in our culture. So it's like, okay, so I have to find these moments of stillness where I can really look at, is this feeding me? Is this depleting me? And what is it that I want to choose for myself personally? And that also can change over the trajectory of our life. I mean, that's changed for me multiple times in my life. But it's noticing and then giving yourself permission to continue the exploration.
So, okay, noticing, there's the point. So if you've gone about your life thinking you're doing and being all the right things, and there's nothing, what would have you know, wait a minute, I'm not on track. This isn't true to myself. What activates that? What is that? Because I think that's the start of the journey, really. Whether you're 4 years old or 74 years old,
When I was oh, go ahead, Victoria.
So we were talking before, and I was sharing about a book I've been reading by Vishen Lakhiani of Mind Valley. And two things prompt me from your conversation, ladies. One is that he talks about our conditioning, that's the word I'm using, from early childhood in our families, in our organizational systems of culture. And he talks about a story that he's from a Hindi family. And when he was about 10, growing up in the US, He said, why can't I have a burger? Everyone else, they smell so good. And he grew up with parents who gave room for him to question
Mm.
the cultural rules. And so his mom gave him the choice and said, go investigate why it is in our culture that we don't eat beef, cows. And so he went and found the information and came back and said, here's my take on it. And she said, well, okay, go for it. And it doesn't mean that he wants to eat beef necessarily. It was that he was given room to see what his values were, what experiences he wanted, and how the people in his world shaped that curiosity for him. And there's another piece that I think is really speaks to how do we know what we want and how to notice if we're moving and becoming who we really authentically want to be. And it's his 3 questions.
Mm.
And the first question is, and this one has just been blowing me away, and I've been sharing it. So thank you, Vision. The first question is, what experiences do you want to have in your life? And you just spend a minute and a half writing them down. What experiences do you want to have in this lifetime? Whether your lifetime is starting at 4 years of age or 40 or 80, you still have, what are the experiences? The second question is, what personal growth do I need to create to have those experiences? I'm like, well, that'll get you going, right? What skills do I need? What do I need to develop in myself? There's lots of opportunities there. And then the last question is, once I'm having those experiences, I've created the personal growth in order to have those experiences. What do I do with them? How do I give back? How do I enhance my world from what I have developed in myself? What's my contribution, right? And isn't that what CreateAWorld is about? That we interview people who have beautiful contributions to the world, not just the 6 of us interviewing each other at different times, but other people too, and how they are being who they are being and how they got there. So any thoughts on that, people?
Yeah, would you give that to Christina, the name of the book and the author and those 3 questions, so she can put it on the when this gets posted?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
if his 3 questions are already out in the world for public consumption, then
Yeah,
otherwise-
they're in the book. They're
Okay.
in the book for public consumptions, and
Yeah.
Well, I guess,
you can
yeah,
go to his website too,
we'll talk a little more during the meeting about
how to
some
do that.
guidelines
Okay.
around sharing. Yeah.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
So, and I think it's also important for us to think about, all the different communication systems, what our body tells us, our bodies give us a lot of information about what is life enhancing versus life defeating for each of us. And again, it's a question of, and this is something that I've definitely been working on in the last couple of years and continue to work on, is building a relationship with my body where there's a good communication flow so that I hear what my body is trying to tell me, before she has to get to the point of screaming and stamping her feet. And also, things like dreams and intuitive hits. And when I was in college, I went to college, and I had decided when I was about 11 years old, I was going to be a marine biologist. That was going to happen. And there were some painful things that happened in my young childhood that made me really sort of put my put my energy into the future. That's what I felt like I could control. And so I stayed on that marine biology path all the way through to college. But when I got to college, I was confronted by some things in the scientific community that I wasn't on board with. And in particular, and I think I mentioned this in one of the other calls, we had some labs where we were expected to participate in vivisection, which is basically, dissecting is when you cut up something that's already dead, and vivisection is when you cut into something that's alive. And I was like, I came to college because I wanted to learn how to save the natural world, not, and I felt like that was abusing it. But all that is to say that I had a dream. And so during the same time, I was continuing to do my art. I was, still acting. I was, and I played the guitar and did some singing and things like that. And I had a dream where I was in a lab, and there were otters there, and otters are my favorite animal. And they were gonna cut into them. And I smuggled them out of the lab in my guitar case. And so, when I woke up from the dream, it was one of those dreams that it was hard to miss what the point was, which was the role of art in my life. And that's I had that dream, 40 years ago, almost by now, and I still remember it crystal clear. So, I think it's remembering that information can come to us in all these different ways, and taking a minute to really listen to the information and give it a place to be valuable.
Well, that almost follows up on what Victoria and Deb talked about last week. How do we know? And your knowing came in a dream. And I think we talked about mental cognition and your body, the body knowing. Liz, what were you going to say?
Well, I've been playing a slideshow of my own life, and coming from the standpoint of teaching is my lifeblood, going back to my own childhood of being in a knowing that I was not in a place where at that time I had a voice, and being in this very, very, very innocent body that just wanted to be in an imaginary world, because the world I was in was not what I signed up for. And so I'm coming from that place, and I know a lot of our viewers are coming from that place of where we feel we grew up in a time and place that did not meet our needs. And I lived in a family who had very high expectations in society, and I rebelled, even though I wore the "I'm a really good girl" hat. You ask anybody that I grew up with, and I was the poster child for the perfect child, right? With the exception of my education, which I struggled through. And I would retreat and go into my imaginary worlds that I built in my beautiful backyard that my father landscaped, and feel in the back of my being that it wasn't okay to dream and imagine, because I grew up in a world where you're supposed to pay attention in school, and be successful, like you've all been saying. So it was such a juxtaposition, and in third grade, I had a teacher that, bless her heart, didn't know how to teach, and I knew then that I needed to change that. And from then on, it was I I fought my whole career to give children a voice so that they could dream. When I was seeing this slideshow in my mind, I used to sit and look out my window in my room when I was supposed to be studying, just dreaming. And then I'm told that that's not okay. You're supposed to focus on your studies. And uh, so rewriting this story about imagination not being okay in our world is now a new pillar for me, a new place to stand on behalf of. I've always been in a stance on behalf of children who know that they're different, um, and adults who know that they're different, uh, and have such beautiful, um, creative, curious ways of being that all include this world of imagination. Uh, so my stance is also coming from a point of innocence, and uh, I was asked the other day, well, why are you scared of showing the world this innocence? And I said, well, it's not always a safe place. I mean, I'm almost 66, and here I am playing with gnomes and fairies, and you know, uh, things that a grown up doesn't necessarily speak of. So I'm all for rewriting this story of innocence and imagination, because there's brilliance there, and an intelligence there that we all, I think, desperately need as part of our story and who we're becoming.
You know what? Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Janice. Okay, when you're talking, Liz, I'm remembering a LinkedIn post I saw, and I wish I had figured out how to copy it so I could keep it for myself, because now I don't know how to find it again. But this person was listing something about neurodiversity, and they'd made this beautiful piece of art listing all these different ones, and I was absolutely shocked, because I have been limited in my understanding of neurodiversity. I know it exists. I believe in it. I think it's magnificent in many, many ways, even though people have had lots of struggles because of being different. But she had listed on this paper, on this drawing, so many different types of neurodiversity that I just sat back and said, wait a minute, that far outweighs what we call neurotypical. What is going on here? And I mean, the educational parts, like the different ones that I'd never heard of, that was interesting. But the fact that neurotypical had to be much smaller in the face of all that. And for me, it was another piece of this composition we call normal isn't necessarily so, and isn't necessarily what to strive for or how to measure yourself. And for me, what you're saying, that including, imagination and all the things that you said, it's not that that's neurodiverse, it's that it's not folded into what's normal, what you're supposed to do to get ahead. And yet there are so many magnificently successful people across the whole spectrum of how you define success who base their whole worlds on creativity, imagination, fun. I think there's a lot that gives us a lot to examine our existing worlds from. That
Yeah,
it
and
ain't
to me,
necessarily so.
exactly. And to me, it's an intelligence
Yes.
that isn't widely accepted. Well, I shouldn't say that because now we're coming to be in a realization that neurodiverse people have created these huge realms without being um, educated in the quote normal way. You know, they educated themselves. And so, from coming from a place of, I'm not smart, you know, because society's telling me, well, if I daydream and I don't focus on my studies, um, that makes me not smart, to realizing that, you know, imagination and quote daydreaming and doodling and, you know, doodling on my notes, doodling on tests. I have a student who does that. She doodles on tests in between questions.
Oh,
That
wow.
that's not smart is it's quite the shift, quite the shift. And so um I mean, it's been a whole upheaval in the quote normal world um, of education. And so I'm really excited that we're starting to recognize that our unique ways of being are what's the I keep seeing a wand in Harry Potter, right? The luminous wand. They're really they're lighting our way now. And and so kudos to any young people and any adults who are uh, willing to step out of that mold and forge ahead on behalf of all of us.
It
Because
almost
it's
makes me
also
think,
about,
okay, go on, Janice.
it's also about bringing us back to our original design. So we talk a lot about, in the field of Tantramat, we talk about, our unique and essential natures, but we talk about humanity's original design. And to me, when you watch children, young children, imagination is a pillar of their existence, right? I mean, so we all come in with this potential for imagination and creativity. And to me, that's part of the original design of humanity. And
Yeah.
then for so many of us, it gets tamped down, or or worse, because we're being channeled to, this sort of other way of being that we've been talking about. So I think it's not only is it about lighting the way, but it's about helping each of us go, oh, right, those things they're part of being human, and arguably have brought all of us in our lives some of the best things, through that
Hmm.
and creativity.
It makes me think, like, you go, like, sometimes things appear in your life that give you notice to pay attention differently, whether it's a discomfort. But why do all these children born that we call neurodiverse? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that might be a way for actually the spirit of the species to say, whoa, we're going to give you a lot of people who think differently, so it's really obvious. So the system has to adapt to it. Because whoever made up the decision that we should all be docile and think rationally. I don't know who did. I have a sense of when it started, but it is not serving humanity that we stay in that model. I mean, yeah.
And
Go
there's
ahead.
no, I don't see a lot of the critical thinking out there. We value art tremendously. We have all these museums from ancient art to modern art, but don't doodle on your test paper. You know, don't create things in the sand or whatever, you know, whatever people say. That, you know, rational intelligence is the pinnacle, but imagination and creative intelligences gave us every invention we've ever got. They may need rational intelligence to refine that and bring it all the way home into something that becomes used in every household or whatever. But, you know, we kind of, so those were the kind of things when I started catching on that to that disparity, the gaps there, that I just started thinking for myself about it. But the part that got really hard was realizing the more I thought for myself and the more I chose not to say, let's just say rational intelligence is the pinnacle of intelligence. The more I wasn't necessarily part of the greater whole, of the social structures, of the mainstream, whatever. The blessing was that I began to bump into people like everybody here on this call. And so that was huge to find out, no, I really am not all by myself, and there really are a lot of people who notice the same things. But that was a tough, like, even if it's just a moment, it can be difficult to be in. First I'm here, then I'm not, then there's a gap before finding your new tribe, so to speak. And because I don't think belonging is a cultural phenomenon, I think that's an original nature of human being phenomenon. And then the next layer for me that I'm in right now is, how do I bring who I am into, you know, that's that thing of in the world but not of it. Well, I'm still in this, you know, American Western society. I have to function there. I can't just, I'm not one of the people that's going to be able to pick up and go live off grid somewhere and say I choose not to participate with that social structure. That's not in the cards for me at this moment. So those have been some of the kind of dicey points for me.
Isn't it an internal dicey as well as an external dicey? Because one of the things that I've discovered is that we get used to it. We have, well, let's get used to, have operated under the historical mind that says this is how you do it. If you know, if you want success or family or whatever, this is how you do it. And the expectation has always been is that I can extrapolate to the future with my historical mind. Now, if you said and think about it, you go, well, that couldn't possibly be really true because we don't know what the future's holding. And to assume that it's always going to be a repeat of the past is a glitch in our processing. So for me, it was almost as if the mind said, no, you are not, the future is not going to be a repeat of the past. And that took some getting used to, actually, even though I want a different future. I still had a feeling inside that to project for a certain future. And I think that's discombobulating for all of us until we go like, and then you start wiggling into, and that's almost a physical sentience of how I be, really be, not the being that my mom wanted or the being that society says I should have been or should be. You know, most of my adult life, I was really proud to be called weird because that meant I wasn't fitting the mold. That didn't mean that I didn't have those historical, this is how you do it thoughts going on in my head. And this is how, like, even this group and the other groups that the listeners are in that hold a different possibility. And it's like opening the door or opening the corral and saying, here, walk through this one, and you'll discover a larger space that you can be within. And then you kind of wiggle and say, well, how do I be in a larger space that no longer has the restrictions that I have unconsciously lived within all my life?
And that includes all the people for whom living conventionally or in the mainstream or according to the historical trajectory of their culture, that is their authentic expression. There are plenty of those people, and that, in my mind, needs to be validated also. And then there's how do we all, get along. So
Yeah, and I think the thing is, it's a million little choices. I
Yeah.
mean, Deb, you had talked at the beginning about what a huge topic this was, and it is, and people devote entire lifetimes and write books and do dissertations all on this topic because it is so huge. But I think in terms of the actual, day-to-day living the beingness, it's recognizing every single choice point that's in front of you. And that's definitely something that I'm still working on, and when I run into a situation of, it's like, am I going to go right or left? Is this going to be life enhancing or life defeating? It's recognizing, okay, what are the choices that are in front of me right now in terms of how I show up, in terms of how I choose to communicate, in terms of the level of grace I'm willing to give myself, the level of grace I'm willing to give somebody else. To me, those choices are where we can really start to, to move the river on behalf of.
And isn't it interesting that at this time of the year, this is our conversation for what is my story? How am I moving into a new story? And I'd like to ponder the possibility that instead of the traditional New Year's resolution notion of story, that we make a little room for this kind of news story. Like, what are my options, as you said, Janice? Have millions of moments that are coming into the next year. What experiences do I want? And really let ourselves have the space to imagine beyond our wildest dreams what experiences we might want. I think we have to first stretch our own mind into what's possible and focus on that sense of, how do I want to go forward into 2024? And all of the things that are happening in the world can continue to happen as they happen. And how do I want to move myself forward with giving everything a place, giving myself a place in that? So I don't know how that how that lands for you guys.
I think it kind of screws with your mind, to be quite frank, right? It's like a lot of times you don't know what you're headed for. You only know that how you have been being is not working. And also the concept of how you do it. I keep getting reminded of my dad was a nuclear physicist, and the way that he got new ideas was usually when he was on the floor. He'd lay on the floor in his office, and I think he probably went into a relaxed state, and different ideas had come. Well, it turns out that happens for a lot of scientists. Now, so they accept, I think somebody said something earlier about that, Deb did, going from you get an idea or a new concept, and then you work it in the rational world to make it work, to figure out actually how it applies. And in that process of allowing this, taking the otters out in her guitar case, allowing that, like, that's not screwy. That was actually giving her some information. My dad or other scientists or even creative people do this a lot, I think, where an idea comes in, a concept comes in, and you kind of look at it and you go, well, whoa, well, how would that be in my life, in my world? And so there's this moment of, I don't know, but I think I'm going to leave it here. And I'm going to start playing with it and seeing how that I might be, which is the second thing you said. What do I need to do to make this idea, this concept, this weird thing that appeared, functional? And it's like, what was it? Oh, I know what it's reminding. In quantum bioengineering, they say sometimes that you, as an observer, you get down to the particle level. And when you're particleizing and you see all these different particles in one idea, it's no longer static. And you can create something out of it that you couldn't when it had to maintain an outward form. And it just, my brain's going like, yeah, that's how you do it. This breaking, allowing enough space with either an idea that's come to you or a feeling that's come to you, and let it move around to become something new that you haven't known before.
And the challenge for that, I think, is staying out of judgment.
I
right?
was just
Because
gonna- there you go. Yeah.
because one of the things I feel like we're sort of trained in really well in Western culture is very quickly, determining whether something is viable, non-viable, right, wrong, good, all that sort of stuff, right? And so it's staying in that neutral space of possibility. And that, again, I feel like that takes practice. It takes diligence. For me, it often takes having a conversation with somebody else who reminds me not to descend into judgment. But that, I think that staying in that neutral space of possibility is another big pillar of what we're talking about today.
I agree. I was going to say that too, because a frequent New Year's resolution that I've heard about is I'm going to lose all this weight. And to engage the things that have been named here of, okay, what are the skills I need to do that? What are the choices or behaviors? What's that on behalf of? Do I really want to lose weight? Nah, I'm fine. Or yes, I do. And then not be critical in the failure, but learn about, oh, did I discover something about how my body uses food that I didn't lose weight this week? Or oh, I didn't know muscle weighs more than fat and I gained muscle. Or, like those kinds of things that are not judgmental, but just information. And then but you have to be able to like slow down and include, not just power through. I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna do that. Well, it may not be possible in 6 months. You may need a 3-year timeline, or to have that kind of fluidity, be able to be included in your thinking, being, feeling, emoting, all that would be an aspect of shifting the culture, the Western mind, really, to include what you named from that those 3 things that man said. This could be brilliant. I think it's remarkable to approach New Year's that way.
And the key phrase you used was power through, I think, because the culture says, go for it, just do it. Whereas everything that you mentioned, Deb, was about reflection. Reflecting about, because let's take that ever popular, I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to get physically fit thing. People don't reflect on how that present state of fitness or present state of eating is woven into their lives. It's as, I know one of the things I used to do is I would reward my kids with a treat. Well, treats just put them into a whole other idea about, I'll just say sugar as something good and special. So if you wanted to be good and special, then you'd eat more sugar, right? Isn't that part of the way the whole mechanism works? We think of matrices of information that are in our brains. That reflection method that you talked about is the only way to approach each one and say, well, does this idea really, is it part of the world that I want to create for myself, or the way I want to be in the world? And reflection is not, let's say, an appreciated skill. We don't take the time for it, we power forward. And let's not power forward on this one. Yeah, go, Liz.
I keep getting my brother. I love my brother. He used to, and I was so innocent. He used to say, "Let's play 52 card pickup." And I was young, so I fell for it every time until I figured it out. But what I keep seeing is let's just throw the cards up. But now, in reflecting what you've all been saying, now let's throw the cards up, because that's what I keep seeing. I mean, I keep hearing this is all new, what we're stepping into, and how we're rewriting our story, how we're shifting our perception. So now I'm seeing the cards stalled and frozen, and I'm looking up and I'm like, oh, okay, the 10 of diamonds. I like that one. So let me look at that one. Okay, what piece of my life here can I take to create my new story? Oh, well, that happened within this 10 of the diamonds. So I'm just going to throw it back up and let that just sit. So that's kind of what I'm seeing now. And I love the idea of reflection and being the idealistic person that I am, just carrying forward me, not necessarily, and this is just for me, not necessarily what that 10 of diamonds provided, not the specific, but the feeling of that life enhancing situation, whatever it was. This is hard for me to language, but okay. So, when I was young, I played with small dolls and I created these worlds, right? Taking that feeling, taking that sense, that essence, and bringing that forward, and then seeing what it will create. Not necessarily that I played with the dolls in the specific times and all of that, but carrying that essence forward. So there's something to that. I don't have anything more other than that.
But is the essence you're talking about a sentience within you that that's what you want to have in future activities, right?
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
important. Learning how to recognize the sentience that is really resonant with your core, original self is critical. And a lot of times we were not supported in listening to our internal sentience.
Yeah.
Or just the joy, as you're describing what you just said, just the joy of, I could not only create this world that I'm playing right now, but I'm a participant in it, and it's just joyful. And I don't know, expressing this or exploring that or just fun, just fun, you know. And to go back to the example of the New Year's resolution of losing weight, I don't know that I would call that fun all the time, but
No.
in fact, probably not at all. But listening to Liz, I can see more of how it could be fun. If I think it from, I'm creating a world. And it's not going to happen in a 2-hour playtime. It's going to happen over whatever it is, depending on what your goals are, what your needs are. And I may have to learn to cook. I don't want to. Oh well. How could I make learning to cook be like what Liz just said? I never thought about that at all. So you just opened up something brilliant for me. But what if that's part of the mix, or could be, for people in their, I don't know, we maybe shouldn't call it New Year's resolutions given what we're all talking about, but I can't think of a better phrase. But we're actually creating worlds, enhancing our own world by our New Year's resolution. That is so cool. That is really cool. Thank you, Liz.
I had this image.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
over to you, Miss Victoria.
I'll pop in. I had this quick image. Instead of 52 cards up in the air, it's 52 kinds of foods. It's the same. It's 52 whatevers. What do you want to put in front of you to experience this year? Go ahead, Liz.
I love it. That's so cool. Well, I'm actually creating a card game. And it's actually a family. It's a series of mathematics games for middle school that you can play. And right now I'm working with a middle school student to create this little family of creatures that she's drawing little creatures for each card. And then I'm creating the games based on middle school concepts. So we're really creating a new world. They're called the Math Scott family, and they're adorable. And each number has their own little card, their own little creature. And So, for example, the Joker is great grandma Josephine, and the two is going to be a little creature named Tommy Two, TWO. So, and then we decided, oh my gosh, we have to create the Math Scott story. So to go along with the card games, we're going to create a little booklet of the Math Scott family and their story and who they all are. So yeah, the 52 cards. So I love that, the thought of, in our own worlds, what cards are we throwing up there? And what a great image to play with for each of us in whatever realms we're moving along with.
I love that image because there's such a freedom in saying, what are all the things I could look at? We started with Victoria giving us a list of what do you want to experience? What do you need to do? Well, all now I have to do is have all sorts of different cards with all the options on it and throw it up and let it sit in the air and go like, which one would be most interesting for me to play with now? So it isn't, we're so used to the linear method of looking at stuff, the outline for the article you're going to write or this, I love that concept. It's just like, whoa, okay. And then anytime that I'm finished playing with one story or one card, then I get to, let me look at that one and see what that would be in my life. This is fun.
And again, when you think about how children play, that's how children play. They have all these possibilities before them, and they just pick one and they move with it. And when they're done with that, they pick another one and they move with that. And there's no sense of having to, have something finished before. They let their energy take them where they want to go, which again, I would suggest that when we see something that's innate behavior in children, it means it's part of our original design.
We've got about 3 more minutes. So what are kind of the conclusions or concluding thoughts, I guess you have for our audience today and for each other?
Okay, well, let's go with the card image. We've got the cards in the air. And if I'm a more linear person, now I want to bring them down. I want to stack them all really neatly and in order according to diamonds, clubs, etc. No. So scratch that, throw them back up there is my thought. And of course, this is my innate design, which is, that I can be seen as scattered very often, but yet that scatteredness can also be an intelligence. So to really look at those aspects of the story of who we are all up there now, and to see how do we, not can we, but how do we want to then, how do we want to play with them moving forward, knowing that these cards have been already created, but yet now there's a new spin on them. There's some new power in there, some new way of being in there to carry forward that we've never seen before.
One more minute, guys. What are your last takeaway?
Harness your power to choose.
Mine would be play. Play with all different aspects of what you want to do. You even don't even know you're going about anything you have a question about, because it's going to yield huge benefits in our lives and others' lives. Victoria, Deb?
that you all have said it. We have more power than we think or than we realize. It may have to be accessed and actualized in little increments, but it's a lot, there's a lot more power, a lot more fluidity, a lot more choice of interpretation and application than we realize.
Thank you.
And everyone has a story.
Yeah.
Yes, oh, that gave me chills. Everybody has a story. Thank you very much for being with us today. Next week, Tantra will be on with Liz and I to carry forth this conversation. So,
Not later.
yeah.